Hey, welcome back for chapter 14, Milestones for Recovery. The number one question that I am most frequently asked is, how long did it take you to recover? My standard response, and I don't mean to be trite, is recover what? If we define recovery as regaining access to old programs, then I am only partially recovered. I have been very fussy this time around about which emotional programs I am interested in retaining and which ones I have no interest in giving voice to again. Impatience, criticism, and unkindness. What a wonderful gift this stroke has been in permitting me to pick and choose who and how I want to be in the world. Before the stroke, I believed I was a product of this brain and that I had minimal say about how I felt or what I thought. Since the hemorrhage, my eyes have been open to how much choice I actually have about what goes on in between my ears. Physical recovery from the brain surgery was minimal when compared to the task of rebuilding my mind and recovering awareness of my body. Following surgery, Gigi kept my head wound clean, and the 35 stitches healed beautifully. The greatest challenge I faced was a problem with the left temporal mandibular joint, TMJ, of my jaw due to surgery, but with the use of a healing system called the Feldenkrais technique or Feldenkrais, it mended quickly. The scar, however, was numb for 5 years, and I believe the 3 drill holes in my skull completely reknitted by year 6. My mother was a very wise caregiver, and although she was protective, she did not stand in the way of progress. In the middle of February, 2 months after my stroke, I took my first solo adventure into the world. My verbal language was good enough to keep me out of trouble, we hoped, and I spent minimal time out and about alone. Gigi drove me to the airport and escorted me to my seat on the plane. A friend picked me up at the other end, so I didn't have to navigate life in the big world for very long by myself. I relished this first leap out of the nest as a huge step in my pursuit of independence. Based on this success, I was encouraged to take even bigger risks. At the 3 month mark, Gigi taught me how to drive again, operating an enormous metal box on wheels at remarkably fast speeds with a bunch of other busy people doing the same thing while they eat, drink, smoke, and, oh yes, talk on their cell phones, reminded me that I was a fragile living being and life is a precious gift. My brain was still struggling with reading. And the hardest part of learning to drive a car, again, was to remember to look for written signs. Obviously, this was a problem. And even when I did see the sign, my comprehension was painfully slow. So, what's that big green sign up there saying? Oh, shit, I just passed my exit. By mid March, Gigi decided I was ready to try living on my own again. Although I was far from really being back in the game, she felt that with the support of my friends, I was ready to try my wings. She reassured me that if I needed her, all I had to do was call and she would be on the first flight out. A part of me was thrilled about my increased independence. A bigger part of me was terrified. Within a few weeks, my first major test of readiness to resume my life was the gig in Fitchburg. That gave me something to concentrate on while I began fending for myself. My friend Julie drove me to the presentation, and it went so well that I was ready. I was heady with success, pun intended. Somehow I managed to not just survive, but to thrive again. I started spending time on brain bank responsibilities on the computer from my home. In the beginning, just a couple of hours every few days was all I could handle. Eventually, I started commuting back and forth to McLean Hospital, a day or two a week. In actual fact, the commuting was more difficult than the work. To complicate matters, this is like it's important for all of you who went through COVID and learned to start doing things remotely, like that hybrid thing that they were teaching us. That is how you can learn to hybridize your life to include like things that are important at work and then things that are important to you as what you want to be in this world. Okay. She's teaching you from the start how to just put in a few hours of something that's important to you. Okay. So that's how you have to do it. You have to do it with the mind of a child. All right. To complicate matters, following surgery, my doctors insisted that I take Delanton as prophylactic to prevent my brain from having seizures. I had never had a seizure, but prescribing medication is a common practice when the temporal region of the brain has been surgically violated. Like a typical patient, I hated my medication because it made me feel tired and lethargic. My biggest complaint, however, was that the medicine masked my ability to know what it felt like to be me anymore. I was already a stranger to myself because of my stroke, but mix in some medication and I was even more disoriented. Because of this experience, I find that I am much more sensitive to why some people would choose insanity over the side effects of their antipsychotic medications. I was fortunate that my doctors agreed that I could take my entire dose at night before I went to bed. So by morning, my mind felt much clearer. I took Delanton for almost 2 full years following surgery. At the 6-month mark, I flew back home to Indiana to attend my 20th high school reunion. This was a perfect opportunity for me to open files about my past. Two of my best friends escorted me around, sharing stories about time at Terre Haute, South Vigo. The timing for this reunion was ideal. My brain had healed enough to absorb new information as well as open old files. Attending the reunion helped me piece together memories of my youth. But again, in this situation, because I was a stroke survivor, it was critical that I not see myself as less than I had been before. Friends from my past were very kind to me, and I ended up having a great time retrieving memories. Shortly after the reunion in June, I attended the annual NAMI convention in July. It was the end of my 3-year term on the National Board of Directors, and I was officially stepping down. I had prepared a 5-minute speech to present to an audience of more than 2,000 NAMI members. With guitar in hand, tears in my eyes, and gratitude in my heart, I thank those wonderful people for giving me the courage to come back. I will always cherish that box of cards they sent me, cheering me on. I know I wouldn't be here today in this condition if it hadn't been for my NAMI family. Walking became a very important part of my routine. When you feel like a fluid, it's impossible to know where your physical boundaries begin and end. Walking helped me become strong again, and within the course of the first year, I managed to average 3 miles a day, several times a week. I walked with small weights in my hands, swinging my arms here and there, flailing them about like a wild child, but in rhythm. I made sure I exercised all of my muscle groups, performing shoulder girdle, shoulder, elbow, and wrist activities. Lots of people looked at me as if I was odd, but having lost my left hemisphere ego center, I wasn't concerned with their approval or disapproval. So I want you to think about that, okay? When she's saying like feeling like a fluid, feeling like air, that's like your mind. That's being stuck in your thoughts. That's like just overly focused on something that's moving at such a high rate of speed that you have no idea how long it would take to actually do all the things that you're thinking about in your brain, or, like all the things that you're ruminating about. So that is the benefit of walking. It's not like some big miraculous thing is going to happen on this walk. It's that you are using your body. You are starting to define your space again as a human being, all right? Even though you're sort of like a human doing something, you're walking. It's like you're not doing anything in your brain, all right? So understand, overstand that this is important. That's the importance of walking. It's not just for health, but that is why walking is one of the best health exercises that like everybody recommends, all right? That's why everybody got their Fitbits to try to make their, 10,000 steps a day, which is like 5 miles. Okay. And that's not guaranteed. That's like based on an average length of a stride. Okay. So if you're shuffling along, you're maybe not getting that many. But anyway, um, walking with weights helped me regain strength, balance, and posture. In addition, I worked with a friend who, through the use of massage and acupuncture, helped me identify my physical boundaries. She means her body. Okay. By the 8th month, I was back to work full time, but still not completely competent, either mentally or physically. There was a sluggishness about my brain that I could not shake. Unfortunately, my job description involved some complex and computer database responsibilities that I knew my mind was not capable of performing. Moreover, due to the stroke, I became acutely aware of how precious little time I have here on this planet. I wanted to move back home to Indiana. Spending time with my mom and dad while I still have them around became a priority in my life. Fortunately, my boss agreed that I could travel for the Brain Bank as their national spokesperson for the mentally ill from anywhere, and she gave me her blessing to return to Indiana. 1 year after the stroke, I moved back home to the Midwest. My favorite place on earth is Bloomington, Indiana. It's the perfect sized college town filled with interesting and creative people. And oh, yes, it's the home of Indiana University. Coming home to Indiana felt grounding to me, and I knew I was exactly where I was supposed to be. When my new home phone number turned out to be the exact date of my birthday, month, and year. Okay, so that's like, she didn't plan it that way. That's how it happened. When she moved back to where she wanted to be, her home phone number was her birthday. All right. So you need to learn to understand that kind of communication. It's not coming from a person who's like encouraging you. Yeah, you should move back home. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be perfect for you. It's that if you learn to see synchronicities and you learn to see signs that are important to you, that's because you create your own external environment based on who you are inside. Okay. My video paused, so I don't know how that's going to turn out. But anyway, you need to learn synchronicities. And then just believe in them because they're only important to you. You don't have to go and tell people about it. They're going to think you're crazy. Okay? All right. Let's see. By the 8th month, I was back. Blah, 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 blah. Okay. 1 year after the stroke, I moved back to, um, wait a second. Okay. 1 year after the stroke, I moved back home to the Midwest. My favorite place on earth is Bloomington, Indiana. It was the perfect sized college town filled with interesting and creative people. And, oh, yes, it's the home of Indiana University. Coming home to Indiana felt grounding to me, and I knew I was exactly where I was supposed to be when my new home phone number turned out to be the exact date of my birthday, month, and year. It was one of those synchronicities in life that let me know that I was in the right place at the right time. Okay, there you go. Post stroke, year 2 was spent reconstructing, as best I could recall, the morning of the stroke. I worked with a Gestalt therapist who helped me verbalize my right hemisphere experience of that morning. I believe that helping people understand what it felt like to experience the neurological deterioration of my mind might help caregivers better relate to stroke survivors. I also hoped that if someone read that account and then experienced any of those symptoms, they would call for help immediately. I worked with Jane Nevins and Sandra Ackerman of the Dana Foundation on a book proposal for this story. Although our efforts were premature, I will always be grateful for their interest and assistance in helping me outline what I valued. Eventually, when my mind was capable of learning large volumes of information again, it was time to re-engage with academia. In my second post-stroke year, I was hired by Rose Holman Institute of Technology in Terre Haute, Indiana, to teach courses in anatomy, physiology, and neuroscience. As I saw it, they were paying me to relearn the details of my profession. And that's how you know you're in alignment. When you are like being paid to do the thing that you already want to learn or that you're already working on, that is where you should invest your efforts. You're like double dipping, but the growth and the gain from that is exponential. Okay. This is not a linear thing. All right. Eventually, when my mind was capable of learning large volumes of information, again, it was time to re engage with it. Blah, blah, blah. Okay. Need to put my finger in the spot where I leave off on so I don't have to keep repeating. All right. As I saw it, they were paying me to relearn the details of my profession. I found that although I had lost my academic terminology, which is in the left hemisphere, okay, I still remembered what everything looked like and their relationships to one another, right hemisphere. I ended up pushing my learning ability to the limit on a daily basis and for the entire quarter. I felt like my brain would explode from overuse. I truly believe that challenging my brain in this way was exactly what I needed. Staying one lecture ahead of the students was demanding. For 12 weeks, I balanced work with appropriate sleep, and my brain performed beautifully. I will always be grateful to the Rose Holman Department of Applied Biology and Biochemical Engineering for their confidence in my ability to teach again. To give you some idea of the chronology of chronology is how it's pronounced, of my recovery, here's a brief summary of the highlights of my progress year by year. Prior to the stroke, I had been an avid free cell player, which is solitaire. But it was 3 years before I could wrap my mind around this card game again. On the physical plane, it took 4 years of walking with my hand weights, 3 miles a day, several times a week before I could walk with a smooth rhythm. During the 4th year, my mind became capable of multitasking, even simple things like talking on the phone while boiling pasta. To that point, I had to do just one thing at a time, which meant everything required my full attention. And along the journey, it wasn't my style to complain. I always remembered what I had been like immediately following the stroke, and I counted my blessings and thanked my brain 1,000 times a day for responding so well to my attempts to revive it. Having had a tasteful of the alternative, I spent a good bit of time feeling grateful for my life. That's what I was just going to stop to say, is that she is telling you how she was practicing gratitude. And that is the only way to get through. Like she's telling you, it took her 3, 4 years, 5 years for the feeling to come back in her scar tissue. Okay, 6 years to gain the osteoclasts. I can't remember which is like bone cell. There's osteoblasts and osteoclasts. One is responsible for like getting rid of old bone cells, and one is responsible for building old bone cells or building new bone cells. But anyway, I'm trying to tell you that if you know what you want today is 5 years in the making, but you have to commit to it every day today, isn't that still 5 years closer than never getting there, right? Or like starting and stopping and starting and stopping. Let's say you start and stop, so it takes you 10 years instead of just doing it committed, like 15 minutes every day. You can get there in 5 years. Okay, that is the importance of her telling this as her story, as being a PhD, as like going through this from both sides of it. Okay, so you don't have to believe it, you don't have to activate it for yourself, but it is proof. The one thing I thought I had lost forever was my ability to understand anything mathematical. To my amazement, however, by the fourth post-stroke year, my brain was ready to tackle addition again. Okay, so like, think of that. She's like a 4-year-old when it comes to how her brain is recovering. All right, so math, 4-year-olds start to understand math. Subtraction and multiplication came online around post-stroke year 4.5. But division eluded me until well into year 5. And that's because you got to know multiplication really well to have it memorized to where you can break it back down into division, right? Working with flashcards helped me drill basic math back into my brain. Now I work with the Nintendo Brain Training and Big Brain Academy programs. That's so awesome. I think everyone over the age of 40, as well as every stroke survivor, would benefit from using this sort of brain training tool. By the end of the 5th year, I could jump from rock to rock along the beaches in Cancun without looking at where my feet were landing. This is a significant accomplishment because up to this point, I had to keep my eyes looking at the ground. The highlight of my 6th post-stroke year was the fulfillment of my dream of having enough oomph in my body to climb steps 2 at a time. Imagery has been an effective tool for regaining physical function. I am convinced that focusing on how it feels to perform specific tasks has helped me recover them more quickly. That is like manifestation, right? They talk about like feeling the accomplishment before it happens. That's why you got to start at low levels, not just be like, I am going to be a millionaire by next year. That's not, you don't know what that feels like, okay? You have to know, you have to like start out at, I look, I just feel accomplished in what I am doing every single day. Okay. That's what you can imagine because you know what it's like to have a good day and feel this sense of like, damn, I did not expect the day to end up like this just because I had no idea how it was going to go. You can reimagine that every single day. A practice of gratitude is that thing. Okay. So don't get all weirded out by the words of it. All right. Um, okay. Imagery has been an effective tool for regaining physical functions. Imagery, imagination. Okay, you have to be imaginative. You have to believe in things that you can't see yet. I am convinced that focusing on how it feels to perform specific tasks has helped me recover them more quickly. Now, I want you to think about that also, is that when you see somebody else doing a task and it's something that you kind of envy them for, and you're like, I could never do that. What you're doing is imagining the feeling of you never being able to do that. Okay. So you're using negativity, negative imagery to manifest you not being able to do something. All right. I had dreamed of skipping up steps every day since the stroke. I held the memory of what it felt like to race up the steps with abandon. By replaying the scene over and over in my mind, I kept that circuitry alive until I could get my body and mind coordinated enough to make it reality. Over the years, people in my professional world would have been very generous and kind to me. Initially, I was afraid my colleagues might see the post-stroke me as having less value and treat me patronizingly, or perhaps even discriminate against me. Happily, this has not been the case. The stroke has not only opened my eyes to the beauty and resiliency of the human brain, but also to the generosity of the human spirit. Many beautiful people have nurtured my heart, and I am grateful for all the kindnesses I have received. Although I had been traveling part-time as a singing scientist for the Harvard Brain Bank since post-stroke year 2, during my 7th year, I accepted an adjunct teaching position in the Indiana University Department of Kinesiology. In addition, teaching gross anatomy has always been my greatest joy, and I began volunteering in the local IU School of Medicine's gross anatomy lab. Revisiting the body and teaching. So, like, just so you know, gross means large, like large anatomy. Okay. Gross motor functions are like walking, using your like hands. I mean, it's like using your major body parts as opposed to like small motor skills or, little dexterity things. Revisiting the body and teaching future physicians about its miraculous design has been a thrilling privilege for me. Also, in that seventh post stroke year, my need for sleep at night had cut back from 11 hours to 9.5. Up until this point, in addition to a full night's sleep, I was a happy napper. For the first 7 years, my dreams had been a bizarre reflection of what was going on in my brain. Instead of having dreams with people and a storyline, my mind scrolled tiny unrelated bits of data. I'm sorry, I'm laughing and I'm distracted. It's because I keep waking up at like 3 and 4 in the morning. I'm like, what do I do with this space of time? To where like I don't think I'm going to be able to go back to bed. So I was like typing on my computer this morning, but I fell asleep as I was typing, and there was like a million E's, and it ended with a W. So it was like, ew. So I just want to like leave it in the typing. But anyway, I presume this reflected how my brain pieced pixelated information together to form a complete image. It was shocking when my dreams started featuring people in a storyline again. In the beginning, the scenes were broken and nonsensical. By the end of that seventh year, however, my mind was so busy during the night that I felt little refreshment upon waking. During the eighth year of recovery, my perception of of myself finally shifted from that of being a fluid back to that of being a solid. I began slalom water skiing regularly, and I believe that pushing my body as hard as I could helped solidify my brain body connections. I confess that although I celebrate being a solid again, I really miss perceiving myself as a fluid. I miss the constant reminder that we are all one. I now live what I would describe as the perfect life. I still travel for the Harvard Brain Bank as a singing scientist. I continue to be affiliated with the Indiana University School of Medicine in Indianapolis. I regularly spend time as the consulting neuroanatomist at the Midwest Proton Radiotherapy Institute, MPRI, housed at the IU cyclotron. Sounds like an awesome roller coaster. Okay. um, where we use a precisely guided proton beam to battle cancer. To help other stroke survivors, I am working on the creation of a virtual reality system whereby individuals can neurologically rehabilitate themselves through what I call visually directed intention. Dude, that is awesome. I'll have to look that up and see what the progress is on it. On the physical front, I love skiing across Lake Monroe early in the morning, and I faithfully walk around my neighborhood in the evenings. For creativity, I play in my art space, creating stained glass wonders, mostly brains, and my guitar is a continual. Um, oh, she creates the stained glass brains. Okay, and my guitar is a continual source of pleasure. I still talk to my mom every day, and as the president of the local Greater Bloomington area, air, oh my gosh, okay, area. I thought it said era, NAMI affiliate. I remain active in advocacy for the mentally ill. Helping people liberate their own inner peace, joy, and magnificent beauty has become my personal agenda. Over the years, I have had the opportunity to share my story with audiences ranging from readers of Discover magazine and Oprah Winfrey's O magazine to the Stroke Connection magazine of the American Stroke Association, ASA, as well as the Stroke Smart magazine of the National Stroke Association, NSA. My recovery story has been featured on PBS's The Infinite Mind, and I can still be heard on the WFIU Profiles program. In addition, this is a wonderful PBS program titled Understanding the Amazing Brain, which airs internationally. I encourage you to tune in as they did a superb job teaching about the plasticity of the brain. Okay. She's got a little reference down at the bottom that says it's a website, www.indiana.edu/tilde, WFIU/profiles.htm. Let me see if I can be patient to get it to adjust. Okay. All right. Okay. See you back to the next one.